Okay, this is hopefully going to be a quick video introducing you guys to our MMRT Altium libraries. I'm going to attempt to explain what a schematic symbol is and what a PCP footprint is, um, how our libraries manage these symbols and footprints, and how to create symbols and footprints so you can conveniently use our libraries with your design. So I have a schematic document open up right now, and a schematic essentially allows us to communicate the functionality of our design so other people can like look at this and be like, oh, this is what this circuit does. Um, but for this video, we're mainly concerned about what a schematic is composed of, and what a bulk of the schematic is composed of is symbols representing each component that you use in your design. So this is the schematic symbol for a 2-pin connector. This is a schematic symbol for a fuse. This is the schematic symbol for a resistor, of course. This is an LED. And if I zoom in on this resistor here, I want to illustrate the point that a schematic symbol is composed of one, a graphical element. So for the resistor, you have that classic squiggly line right there. But if I click on the resistor and I go to my properties panel, you can see that for this specific resistor, it has a bunch of properties linked to the graphical element. So a designator, we designate resistors with the letter R, and the number that follows means that this is the second resistor in the schematic. So this is R2, which means that we have a unique identifier for this specific resistor in the design. Um, we have a description of this resistor, and in this parameters section here, we have a table listing a bunch of important properties that describe the operation of this component. So the manufacturer of this resistor is Vishay. This is the part number, which I'm not even going to try to spell out for you. The power rating is a tenth of a watt. The package size is 0603, so 0.06 by 0.03 inches. Super tiny. The tolerance is 1%, and most importantly, this is a 4.7 kilo ohm resistor. So one, we have the graphical element, and we also have a bunch of properties that we populate the graphical element with. So when we have the graphical part of the resistor, we create that in a schematic library file. So if I click on this file here, this is our team's schematic library file for a resistor. This is universally used throughout the team. And it's titled res for resistor, and the file extension is .schlib, and this stands for schematic library, of course. So if you were to create a new graphical element for a new component that we don't already have, this graphical part for, creating a new schematic library file would be the way to do it. Yep, so this resistor is composed of 2 pins. So these black lines with these, white little dots on them, I guess you can say, these are pins, and these basically define electrical or points of electrical connectivity in the component. So this pin of this resistor is connected to the cathode of this LED, and then the other pin of the resistor here is connected to ground. Obviously, components can have more than 2 pins, so if I have like an integrated circuit, it can have 20 or 24 pins to it, right? But for simplicity, we're just sticking with a resistor right now. I want to draw your attention to the properties panel here. So as you can see, we have the designator here again. It's labeled with R for resistor, but then there's no number behind it. It just has a question mark. It's important to have a question mark here. This is basically just used as a placeholder. So if I were to drag and drop a bunch of resistors onto this schematic here, all of their designators would be R question mark, and Altium actually has a really handy tool called annotate schematics, where it'll automatically number every component in your schematic for you. So that's where the question mark comes into play. It's just a placeholder. So if we look in the parameters section here, you'll notice that there are no properties for the resistor in here. That's because we store all the properties for all of our resistors, and in fact all of our components, in a team Excel file. So this is the Excel file here. So we have a spreadsheet for resistors, spreadsheet for capacitors, transistors, connectors, diodes, and the list goes on and on with a bunch of different component categories. So just focusing on resistors right now. Each row of the Excel spreadsheet represents an individual component, or in this case an individual resistor. I know this may look a little bit daunting because we have so many resistors, but let's just focus on row 2 for now, and the column headers. So the column headers basically represent each property of the resistor. So this resistor here is this part number. Its manufacturer is also Vishay. The manufacturer part number is basically just the same thing as the part number. We have the description here. And then this column, library ref, this basically tells Altium what graphical element or what schematic library file to use for this component. So when I drag and drop this specific resistor from our components menu or from our libraries menu onto my schematic, it'll look like the graphic outlined in this file, which is a resistor, which is what we want. This library path column here, the way we have things set up, it's just going to be your library reference. So the name res followed by the file extension, so res.schlib. And essentially, Altium's going to read this spreadsheet. It's going to go row by row, and it's going to say, okay, so for this resistor, I have all these properties for it. And when it gets to these two columns, it's going to say, so when I'm going to populate the library here, when I'm going to create the library for this resistor, it's going to look like the graphic outlined in this file, as I just mentioned. And all the properties, like I said, it's going to populate all the properties into this parameters table, into this description section here, and some of the other text fields you'll see in the properties panel.